This is an introduction to an inquiry activity that you'll be doing about stellar populations. For the activity that you're going to be working on now, you'll be building on your knowledge about spectra and colour of blackbody radiators, and you're going to apply that knowledge in an investigation of stars and star clusters. This is an inquiry activity, so you're going to have some control within the constraints of the resources available to you to choose the question that you want to investigate. Now, for many of you, astronomy isn't your primary interest, and that's okay. What we really want you to pick up during this activity is a good feel for the reasoning and tools that astronomers use to solve problems, and the same for many other scientists, because these skills are really applicable to many other fields. So you already know that the peak colour of a black body is dependent on its temperature, as described by Wien's law. So blue objects are hotter than redder or cooler objects. A white object, one that appears white in the visible part of the spectrum, will be radiating equally across all the visible spectrum, so across all the colours. The sun, and of course all other stars, emit across the electromagnetic spectrum, and we can learn a lot about the process of stellar evolution by looking at those spectra. So it's really cool that we can use some of those simple principles that we know about colour and light and spectra to understand the basics about stars and how they evolve. And in the end, you'll be able to use some of this knowledge next time you see pictures of the Hubble Space Telescope, and you'll be able to describe a little bit about what's going on with some of the different stars that you can see in those images. In some sciences, you can do hands-on experiments and control variables in your investigations. So, for example, in biology, you might examine the response of a cell line, so a group of a particular type of cells, to different conditions or different drugs. In physics, you might look at the aerodynamics of a surface or particular shapes in a wind tunnel lab. But in some other sciences, including astronomy, you can't touch the objects that you're trying to study. You can't manipulate them. You can't do controlled experiments with them. We can only observe. So light becomes an astronomer's best friend. It's not only visible light we're talking about, but across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, including X-rays, infrared, radio, and so on. Whereas an image gives you information about what's happening at a specific wavelength, a spectrum, the whole spectrum, provides information about the distribution of light across different parts of that spectrum, how it varies in some parts compared to others. Astronomers really like spectra. Spectra are worth 1,000 pictures to astronomers. You're about to see some pictures or images that are created by combining different images taken at different visible wavelengths by the Hubble Space Telescope. So when we look at these pictures, I want you to start thinking about what you want to know. It's your turn to come up with the questions. I want you to look at the images and try and think, why is it so? Think about what you see, the colours, the surroundings, the brightness of the stars that you see, how it all fits together. After you've come up with a few questions that you think you might be interested in, you'll need to come and talk about it with me, and I'll help you guide your questioning into something that we actually have the resources that can help you answer at least one of those questions I'm sure that you will come up with. So here are these Hubble Space Telescope images. They're of star clusters, so I want you to think about the stars that you see within that cluster. They're related in some way. Think about the colours that you see? Why do they look like this? Did you realise that the heavens were so colourful? What causes these colour differences, perhaps? What other things are associated with some star clusters? How are these images different? What do they show in common, and what do they show that is different from each other? What springs to mind when looking at this cluster and its surroundings? At the risk of sounding like my 3-year-old, why? 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 There are a lot of stars here and so much information. What do you want to know about? So at this point I want you to pause. I want you to have a talk to other people who are at this stage so you can work together on this inquiry and come up with some questions that you think you might be interested in finding out about. You can have a look at the printout versions of these images as well. Now that you've come up with a question, here's what you're going to get. Hopefully this will help you answer your question. You'll see in this image here a number of stars that are labelled with numbers 1 through 10 or 11. You are going to get some data about these stars. You're going to have this picture available to you, and I'll be giving you some spectra of each of these stars. And also some, well, I've written here graph paper, but I'd prefer that you do your graphing on Excel. So when an astronomer gets a new data set, they clean it up, they extract the important quantities, and then there's a lot of plotting or tabulating to compare these, or look at correlations, I guess, between these different variables, just like you would do an investigation in the lab. So the idea is to see if we can figure out if there's a relationship between different quantities. So in this case, between the mass, the radius, luminosity, and the colours that we see, and so on. These spectra that you'll be getting and the images that you have here are the exact same tools that astronomers would use on a daily basis, these types of images and spectra. So you'll be doing exactly what a real researcher, kind of, does every day. If you've got any questions, come and talk to me. Good luck.